Alright, several hours later on planet Morklon.
What is this? It appears the Sony protected us during the crash.
How convenient.
It is convenient that you collected enough of them, Ratchet.
Thanks for the help, guys. What? I'll give them back.
I mean, yeah, what else are we supposed to do with them, Clank?
It's only a frog. By the way, it's only a frog like that. I don't even think you get a cutscene at the end where Ratchet frees the Zoni that he collected.
Come on.
Oops.
I mean, it can still surmise that it happened between games, obviously, but
Probably, yeah.
You have to remember, still final game, but like I said, a lot of things are still left a bit hanging by the time this game ends.
Again. I don't want to harp on it too much, but again, honestly, the only reason I know this was originally meant to be the final game was because you told me, because, again, the game is perfectly fine, but it doesn't give me, like, endgame vibes. And I'm not saying that every final project in a series needs to be like endgame, but...
Well, okay, let's compare to something we did in the past. Gears of War 3, despite having, some level of seeing some things open, did add a sense of finality even without necessarily the scope, being as big as 2, for example.
Well, it helped that A, we finally took down the Queen of the Brood, and 2, it really did feel like it was more or less the end of the war. Sure, there might be some cleanup to do, but it's kind of like Return of the Jedi, the ultra big bad was defeated, essentially. And, okay, I guess one could say, well, isn't that nefarious for Ratchet and Clank? I mean, yes, I do consider Nefarious their arch rival, but he seems like that kind of guy who could come back unless they absolutely kill him, which, is kind of an off-and-on basis.
Well, we will see how that happens next part. For now, it's time, believe it or not, for another epic battle.
It all started years ago, when I was just a child. Chief Zahn Gribnak was manning his post at the Arundai outpost, when suddenly... evil Commander Argos attacked! Desperate to protect our village, Gribnak led a team
A
of
shop attacked a bunch of innocent people?
Also, they kind of missed the subtitles for that bit.
Victory would not be theirs. Chief Gribnak and his noble lot were captured, imprisoned, briefly pardoned, imprisoned again, and killed. The death of Zahn left us defenseless.
Hope is the biggest killer of all.
Laid waste to our village by destroying the Arundai floodgate. It was a crushing defeat.
Man, if only we had a time machine to fix that.
Zahn had been here to defend us against Argos. I guess you can't change the past.
Or can we?
The Fongoids and give us a ride.
Again, this is technically...
It's just a shop, just don't go there.
Although it's worth noting that they're kind of doing this not out of the goodwill of their heart alone, but only because that way they think they can actually find a ship that they can use, if they alter time. So effectively, the plot is put temporarily on pause, just so you can have this battle in the meantime. Pacing-wise, it feels admittedly a bit weird. Like, this should have been happening before you went against Dr. Nefarious. I get they want to have a bit of a brief levity moment for the sake of having the game brief, and letting you do stuff and enjoying more the gameplay with Ratchet and Clank. But I don't know. This feels like we were just having the big confrontation with Nefarious, which has been delayed because of the capture, and now we're doing something completely different just for the sake of getting a ride to get back to back on the station.
It's like if in Endgame, right before we fight Thanos for the last time, oh, shoot, suddenly we need to fight Loki again.
I have kind of a better idea, Jova. It's like in between, Infinity War and Endgame, there was a movie set, timeline-wise between the two of them, because yes, we did get Captain Marvel, that was a prequel to, recontextualize some things. No, it was like, it was, actually, we kind of did. That was Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Technically, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yeah, like Ant-Man and the Wasp technically ends after the end of Infinity War, since that's right when people are getting dusted. But I mean, and yes, it does technically tie into how Thanos is defeated, so I guess
that's the
you
equivalent.
go.
So maybe there's a, it's also might be, something that some writers are more accustomed, to in terms of pacing. I don't know. It just feels.
Although
it just feels weird a bit to me.
I feel like it works better for Ant-Man and the Wasp because that was technically its own movie still, like, divorced from the bigger action of Avengers. Whereas this is like if you literally had it happen right in the plot of Endgame, essentially. Now, if I were to put on my developer's hat, knowing that apparently the development for this may have been a bit troubled and rusted at some
It is
point,
pretty clear, but they developed the set piece before and just did not know where to put it. I can definitely see that.
I also do chalk it up to them going, guys, we need to make sure we actually use the time travel mechanic enough. So, yeah, this section's here basically because they wanted one more time travel section before we face off against Nefarious.
Combining that also with the epic battle.
Which is like, I'm more like, guys, wouldn't the obvious thing to do have been to, well, first and foremost, why not have the time travel mechanic be used to have us face off against Nefarious right before he takes advantage of the tribe, essentially? If you want to use that for a final time travel gimmick, essentially. Now, story-wise, we can maybe chalk up Ratchet and Clank only doing this because they think they'll do a ship because of, well, you're not supposed to really use the time travel machine because it can affect the cosmos, so they consider this like a necessary evil. Best case in scenario I can say. Like, I do feel like that's one issue you're going to have with time travel stories is the moral implications, that is, if you really want to dive into that on actually using a time machine, which makes people go, no, don't do the awesome time travel journey or whatnot. It's the wrong thing.
Yeah, the Doctor Who gets this kind of thing almost all the time. Like, hey, why don't the Doctor just use the TARDIS to go back and stop the villain? Because,
and then Moffat decided, you know what, let's have one episode about killing Hitler, because, want to have shock value in my series.
Yeah, but it
and
was
let me guess, it turned out...
I know.
Let me guess, it turned out killing Hitler was the wrong thing because that somehow leads to
actually, Joven, they don't do anything with it.
It's just, a plot device for shock value that is in service of the main plot of the season, which is complicated. The reincarnation of a character that is connected to the Doctor in some fashion.
Okay, was this the 12th Doctor when he was in that
11th,
edgy period of his?
Yeah.
Oh, really? The 11th?
Yeah.
The 11th doesn't seem needlessly edgy from what I can recall.
Not necessarily, so it's more like overly complicated because, again, Moffat. But, again, we're getting a bit out of track. Anyway, I also broke a trend, unfortunately, and equipped the too edgy for you armor early on before the extra part. I only did it because it actually saves things, makes things easier for the battles like this. And there's the fact that in cutscenes, the armor is not registered. Ratchet has this default one without the helmet, if you noticed. So, it doesn't really fucking matter.
So, as we mentioned before, this was apparently planned to be the end, but I don't think we've dived too much into why initially they wanted this to be the end. Like, were they sick of the series, or was it just that they legit thought this was, like, a reasonable place to end things?
To be honest. Again, there's this weird thing in... okay, it is present a bit all over the world, but I argue more prominently in America when it comes to the entertainment media, that the more something has numbered sequels, labeled properly and saying this is the nth installment in a franchise, the more there's a scary thought that it will not sell well because of, being the later installment of a franchise, and it might scare someone to actually pick that up. Again, I cannot tell how it is entirely in the world, especially because in some countries, like say Franco-Belgian comic books, they operate on an anthology level, so it's not necessarily direct sequel level. But for example, in Japan, a factual manga series have been going on for decades, like Detective Conan or JoJo, but they never particularly suffered this problem. in a specific manner. But I get the idea. Someone at Sony, in this case, might have been, oh no, this franchise we're having with a proper plot that is not, because it's not stuff like, say, Gran Turismo, which doesn't have a plot to begin with. It's been keeping going since the early days of the PS2. So we might not be able to keep going forever. So we need to do something about it to make it end with style. Probably that.
Wouldn't that be a funny irony? Sony, while they were trying to focus more on games with stories, suddenly were worried that a game series might have too much story.
It was also part of remember, Joe, it was also part of a whole moving away from the past that they started with the PS3 era.
Right, yeah. Like, I'll admit, like, part of me does still regret not getting a PS3. I mean, I literally had no control over that, but man, seeing some of the growing pains,
yeah,
I'm kind of glad I just got back on with the PS4.
Your mother will be very disappointed.
But this Lombax is here to help us.
I'm Ratchet. This is Clank.
I'm Zan. This is Toofer and Enot. Yurik, go take shelter with the others. We'll protect the floodgate.
Why is he talking like an adult Yoshi?
That's the way the Fongoid express themselves. I don't know what to tell you. Also, more hydro tanks. We also have to remember, cursed hardware to begin with. The PS3, remember, was always a bitch to work with. Again, one of the reasons why, despite taking still the sweetest time and a fuck ton of money, games are technically more accessible to be developed these days. It's because the architecture is actually decided to accommodate for that. Because both the two biggest examples are the PS3 and the Wii U. The reason why not many games were developed for them, or unless there was the primarily builder aggressively pushing marketing, was because development team took a look at the hardware and they were like, let's try not to. And as we mentioned in stuff like the Singularity commentary, these effectively also hampered some other third parties which were developed initially for another platform, for example PC, but because they wanted to also have a PS3 version, they were actually hindered by that.
Like, let's not forget also that the PS3 was so alien in terms of, its developing hardware that it is the leading reason why ports to the PS4 either took a while or just didn't happen.
What the hell is that Agorian doing? There you go. Okay, gone, sorry.
Let's not forget, the PS3's tech being so alien as it was made it a massive pain for anything to get ported to the PS4 because they practically had to redo the game just to match it up with future generations, essentially.
And still to this day, many games are still stuck on that.
Like, we are still waiting for Metal Gear Solid 4 to see a return. Hopefully,
well, that's
eventually
third party. I'm talking
even
mainly first party, which should be possibly the easiest thing to do for a company to take care of its own IPs, but
That's true, yeah. So many games stuck to that thing. Like, I mean, I really do want to know part of what they were thinking with the PS3. I mean, okay, the story's obvious. They were high off the success of the PS2 and thought that they could do no wrong, but even outside of that, were they just not considering the future in regards to how different the tech was from, like,
on the contrary, they were instead focused too much on the whole moving forward with the idea of the technology is evolving this much for the HD era, and we need to have possibly a clean fresh slate for almost everything and moving away from what we did so far. Especially because, remember, it was also the whole mentality that at the end of the day, especially also back then, people were still buying consoles mostly just for, one game they were carrying for the family potential, not necessarily just the stuff that was the killer app for the Wii, like say Wii Sports or party and stuff, but even on the basic things like a sport game, not necessarily just FIFA, but also Madden, for example, for America. Some people will buy the console just for that and not give a single shit about what the company's portfolio will be.
There's a beautiful irony in the fact that by trying to focus on the future, they ended up with a console that is dated and very much now the past, essentially.
That's kind of what you get when you keep moving forward without looking back. But it's a metaphor on the bigger thing, and only ironically the future will tell what's gonna happen. Anyway,
Yeah, hindsight's 2020. I dig how the
no,
tank
Jova,
also
this
has
is
a dance emote.
2025.
Anyway, I dig how even the tanks have dance emotes.
Yeah, like I said, everything. Okay, you mentioned the Intuzo Destruction when you wanted the Groovytron to actually sync a bit better with the game's, music. In some cases it does, but I cannot tell if it's in all different aspects. For example, in some particular boss fights, you do get one specific, variation that's more in line with what's happening for that boss fight. But again, I do not know if it's a, properly programmed thing, or it's just very specific for some very specific situations. Anyway, in order to defeat Captain Tesco, as we've said, we need to plant literally again some seeds in order to make sure that they grow, so we can reach the place from the present to the past. There you go.
You know, those electrocution animations almost look like they're 2D animated within the electrical field.
I don't know if that's what's happening or not. Like I said, I am impressed by instead the Pixelator, the weapon that's going to be introduced with the 2016 reimagining, but I don't know even how that works. I think it's still 3D modeling, just, it transforms into little cubes rather than that simulates a Doom-esque sprite, but it's still damn impressive at the end of the day.
All in due time.
There you go, I was just searching what the other patch was.
Boy, this scene has seen better days. You know, honestly though, okay, if I were in charge of the series, I would think this doesn't have to be an ending, but a new chapter. Like, instead of it just simply being an end, why not have it be about to a new era where Ratchet and Clank basically become time cops, basically. Like, have the Great Clock be their base, essentially, but then they have to travel throughout time and space to solve problems and whatnot.
I do wonder if maybe it was considered at one point, but they just, decided to not do it. And keep in mind, the fact that they left a couple of things, still hanging, did work out for the franchise, because, when they inevitably continued it, it was relatively smooth instead of actually, being more awkward, shall we say.
It's interesting to consider that, maybe they did that sort of, out of habit, or, just to, in case, leave that little nugget in case, or maybe there was somebody who secretly did want the series to continue, so they left that planted in. Like, it's all speculation on my part, but it's an interesting thing to consider. Kind of along the lines of how Sly Cooper 3 pretty much did leave that blatant cliffhanger with the time machine.
Alright, Weebs, do you have any other British market chains to use as substitution?
Are we're still on Argos here?
Yeah, but again, I already used Tesco, so I want to try another nickname, but I don't know much about British.
About Asda.
There you go. Again, you know it, I don't. So yeah, the fight against the dropship, the captain, is very simple. Similar to the Hydra tank, you damage it, enough, then rip out the exhaust, bullets, and Ryrant repeat a couple of times. The reason why it wasn't working the Groovytron is because I launched it a bit too late after the ship had dropped already. It will be explained by TJ Hickman himself in the Insomnia Museum, but the thought process behind the Agonians was trying to create a whole bullies, school bullies, jocks versus nerds situation. With the idea that the Fongoids were just the anime club type of kid that get bullied. The Terrachnoids are just the nerds of the class, and the Agonians are instead the jocks that only care about sports. There you go, one last ripping. There you go. Well.
The Fongoids will remember this day forever. We owe the both of you our gratitude. Is there anything we can do to repay you?
Well, now that you mention it, we'd love to use that ship.
Well, it might take some time to fetch it out of the creek, but when we do, it's all yours. Now,
it's a good thing we don't have to wait that much, thanks to conveniently placed portals.
So, now what?
Well, we go back to the present and reap our rewards. Remember, this whole thing was done because we needed a spaceship to return to Nefarious Station.
Oh no, we went too far forward, the ship is gone.
Again, it kind of feels so odd that after what Orvus said about the Fongoids misusing time travel so much, they still have this mechanic of time altering just because, and it's treated in a positive manner because we applied what is perceived as positive change towards the main characters.
It was a shining victory in Fongoid history. Say, do I know you two? You look awfully familiar.
Nope. First time here. And our second. We were just admiring your Agorian space cruiser.
She's perfectly restored. I was going to take her up for the show, but her batteries are dead.
So it's not perfectly restored then.
Yeah. Not to mention, I love it. It totally took just a couple of years, I forgot how many there were, for the Fongoids to forget that they are supposed to give the ship to these two.
Just toss them into these charging stations.
Oh well. Anyway, that means that we need to gather 3 batteries as a last, thing, which is an excuse to showcase how good the place now is. Again, I don't mind it too much because I know of another example where a concept similar to this happens, but it's done for the sake of drama, and the time changing is done to such a negative degree that the main character goes into basically an emo spiraling down of depression, which is very annoying. So I'd rather have this than that, to be honest. But it still feels a bit odd considering everything. Again, it's the game wanting the cake and eat it too, with the whole, it's about time, so let's have time shenanigans, but at the same time, let's, point our fingers towards misuse of time travel. Alright, another battery.
Outnumbered by hundreds of Agorian talons.
Forgot what the extra battery is for. Maybe a titanium vault? I forgot.
Nothing but sheer willpower and an old gardening tool of some sort.
That's so cool. What about that?
John knew that if the floodgate broke, the settlement would be lost. So while the Lombacks fought Commander Argos, he snuck everyone out of the shelter.
Eric says there was a talking lunchbox.
Oh, I'm afraid he's mistaken. That lunchbox was actually a direct descendant of Orvis himself. So you see, the Zoni still watch.
I mean, they actually are not wrong on that.
Afternoon! Here to see the show?
I think I'll correctly just give up and get to the ship. Other stuff I'll get it off screen.
Cluster, warp drive. Perhaps we should read the instruction manual. See? Nothing to it. And now the booster. That is the radio. Hold on, I'll just... No, that knot wasn't supposed to...
Alright then, tune in for the next part for the epic conclusion where we go back to Nefarious Space Station and set things off. See ya.
So yeah.